You might not think of Peter Criss of Kiss as being much of a tough guy. After all, he's the Cat, and he wrote the ballad Beth. But when I interviewed him, I learned that he grew up in Brooklyn, he was surrounded by gangs, and this was the time of the Vietnam War. So here's a piece of that interview where he talks about growing up in that environment and how it impacted his music. Peter, if you're ready, we can get started.
Yeah,
This looks intimate enough.
Slate is up.
Focus rolling, please.
You good in both cameras, Marty?
Yeah, you're good. Mark it.
Sound?
Yeah, mark it.
Peter Criss, take one. I mean, as you know, the 60s, and especially the late 60s, was a time of some serious times.
Yes.
Musically, politically, culturally.
Wonderful time.
A lot of great music and great change. Moving into the 70s, what I find interesting about Kiss and to some of your peers like Aerosmith, someone like Ted Nugent, the 70s kind of brings the fun back into music. And I wanted to ask you, what were your motivations as a band? Was it, as you mentioned, to create the party? Was it, what was your motivation as a band, do you think?
70s, you're right. The 60s, 70s, it was the best time, I think, 50s, 60s, 70s, as Frankie Valli would say, in the history of music. There'll never be that again. I think the 60s, for me, was like maybe it was in Vienna for Beethoven and Mozart and those guys at that era of time. Because let's face it, nothing that was ever written after that. There was never other symphonies written like that. People tried, but who was going to top Beethoven? Who was going to top Mozart? Who was going to top Brahms? Who was going to top all these Chopin? There was a time that was supposed to happen. I believe the same thing in the 60s and 70s. That was the time to create. It was okay to create all you want. Nobody said you can't do that, you can't do this. And with that kind of carte blanche then, it was wonderful to, let's throw a big, let's throw some vibes or so here. No, that's unheard of, so what? That's the best part about it. Let's do that. So everything you wanted to create then was okay. There was a war going on. People were desperate. People were afraid. It was also a time of freedom. You could wear what you want to wear. You could grow your hair down here, which I did. It was a great time to be a rebel. And the 60s, to be in Greenwich Village was like an honor. I'd be there 24/7. I'd get on a train and I'd spend my life in Greenwich Village. In the main section, like near UCLA, NYU, the park, every Saturday and Sunday, man, I'm talking hundreds of musicians would come down there with congas, bongos, timbales, guitars, drums, and jam 24/7, all day long playing. Sunday, you go to Central Park, there was a fountain. Hundreds of musicians would meet and talk music of this. And then what do you think of this band? What do you think of that band? What do you think of the British band? What do you think of the Zeppelin? What do you think of the Airplane? And it would be so much knowledge of music was just so beaming in the world, and everyone wanted a piece. Everybody was listening to it. It seemed the Beatles were changing the world. Their lyrics were changing the world. It was an amazing time to be a young guy at that time, and I wouldn't give it up for all the tea in China.
And do you think Kiss, in some sense, helped bring the fun back into music?
Yes, I do, because number one, Jerry Nolan from the New York Dolls was my closest friend. I don't know if people know that, but we grew up together in Brooklyn. We went to school together. He gave my first drum lesson. It was like, I was jealous actually when he got the Dolls because they were so cool. They were such a force in New York to reckon with. Everyone loved the Dolls in New York. It was funny, New York was the only place in the world they were famous. I think their album, Too Much Too Soon, was a good title because they were the only one they ever did, never to know it. But Jerry was a type of guy that loved to, image was extremely important, as important as the music, I think more so with those guys. Looking great, they looked adorable. They looked like chicks with the eyeliner and the chick boots. We tried it and looked like we were in drag. We looked like four guys in drag. Gene's a big guy. He looked like an old whore from some old whorehouse. And so we realized that makeup, that the glam didn't look great on us. It wasn't going to fly for us. But we knew we wanted to do something that no one else ever did in the world. And we had a chemistry to it, and we wanted to be the Beatles. We wanted to be four guys that each one of us was like John, Paul, Ringo, and George, and everyone loved each one of us separately, but all together they loved us like immensely. And that was we thought, wow, what a great idea. It was like kind of when we saw Alice Cooper, he was the only one who had makeup on. No one else did. So we thought, what would it be like if 4 guys had the makeup on? And the 4 guys all shared the limelight. It was great. Those days are gone. You know, everything went crazy. And everybody got ego crazy and money, and all those bad things started happening, drugs and everything else. But the idea was brilliant.
Last question, and I just want to ask you, I mean, whether we call it hard rock, whether we call it heavy metal, whatever we want to label it, at the end of the day, for you as a musician and as a person, what's the importance and the value of playing this music? Why is it so important to you?
And I listen to the Beatles still, listen to Stones still listen to Zeppelin still. But I think for then, like you said, you got to remember, we were in war. I was drafted to NAMM. Thank you, God. I didn't go. I had flat feet, which was fine with me. I didn't want to go anyway. Half of my buddies who did go never came back, or came back nuts, or came back drug addicts. There's a lot of hate. I grew up in Brooklyn. It was a tough neighborhood. There's a lot of gangs. I was in gangs. I saw my fair share of danger, of violence. I was violent. I was in a gang. I was making guns and selling them for $5 a gun in my life when I was younger. It was the only way to survive in Brooklyn. You either join a gang, or they make you join them, or you get beat up every day of your life. So I was hard. I was the toughest kid in the band, no doubt about it. Gene and Paul were from Queens, much nicer neighborhood. Ace was from the Bronx, nowhere as tough as my neighborhood. And so I had an edge to me that was great, I guess, for a drummer, because drummers should be crazy. We should be animals. We should bash things. And I love to bash things. And I had a major temper then. I hated the war. I hated the idea of the war. It was wrong. I protested against it. I was in a lot of protesting back then. I got involved in a lot of political stuff. And I was an angry young man. I was an angry drummer. And I think I got it out every night on them drums. It seemed a lot of us were. I think the world at that time, as much as it was love and peace, there was a lot of anger, man. There was a lot of stuff going on that we were not happy as Americans. We weren't. Canada, America's 2 different places, but America was not a happy bunch of campers. Thousands of guys dying every friggin' day. For no reason whatsoever. We lost the war anyway over there, which was a joke. The people itself, even in America, were not content with what was going on. You saw major marches. I remember when Kennedy got killed. I remember when Martin Luther got killed. I remember when Bobby Kennedy got killed. I was there. I was a young guy, but I was there in the historical moments of my life, like watching the World Trades the day I watched that happen. You get angry, man. I get angry. I got angry. And I think I was a really angry guy for quite a long time. And the way I would get that out, that anger, was playing.
Great.
Was get back there. And thank God I would have been a murderer, maybe. I would have been around axing people, chopping people up, or shooting people if I didn't sort of vent. Maybe I think about that sometimes, that if I didn't find the drums, or they found me, God gave me a gift to play these things, that so much of my energy sometimes my hands would be bleeding. I played one tour with 2 broken hands and a cast. I put the stick in and still played. That I had so much pent up stuff for me that I was not happy with a lot of things. And so the drums became for me, and still is, my great love for living, that if I couldn't play, I wouldn't want to get up every day. I still play every day. I still have my kit set up, not as big as the old kit. The old man can't maybe get around them as much as I do, but I get around them quite well. And it's a gift I find. My mom used to say that God gave me a talent, and it would be such a sin to waste it. Wasted talent was a big thing with her. It's a shame to see people waste their talents. We all in this room, I'm sure, have a lot of talent for a lot of different things that I cannot do, you do. That should not be just thrown away so easily. That should be nurtured and let it take you to where it's going to take you. And man, I've had a wonderful life.
Peter, Pleasure.
Oh, thank you so much.
That was
Thank
fantastic.
you. God bless you. Thank you.
Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
That was great.
Yeah, I like calm interviews. I love interviews like this. This is,
Yeah, well, it's not bad.
you know, because usually you get in a room and it can get really hyper and crazy. You guys, I find Canadians are very cool.